Hello and welcome. Joining us today on Jakesong Musings is jazz saxophonist Camille Thurman. Camille, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Instead of me going through a big thing about introducing you, why don't you tell our Jakesong audience a little bit about yourself? Uh, just a basic introduction.
Sure. I'm a saxophonist and vocalist, born and raised and based in New York City. And my most recent project that I released with the Darrell Green Quartet is called Confluence, Volume 1, Alhambra. I'm also an educator. I'm also an advocate for young musicians who don't have access to opportunities to perform or play music, as well as young women. And I love what I do, performing and sharing this music with the world.
Thank you very much. Could you please tell us a little bit about the first time that music caught your attention and that you wanted to dive in and get to know it better? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I would say my first interaction with music was as a child. My mother, she was a New York City public school teacher, and at the time when I first got into school, she was finishing up her master's in reading and literacy. And while she was researching her project, she found out that the neighborhood that I grew up in was St. Albans, Queens, a home at one point to a whole jazz community of musicians, Count Basie, Lena Horne, Ella Fitzgerald, Illinois Jacquette, so many musicians. And as she started doing the research of finding out who lived in our neighborhood, she was checking out the music, which led to checking out the art and the history during that period of time. And everything that she was learning, she would bring home to me and make it a lesson for me too, because she believed that it was really important for me to know where I came from and to know the history of my neighborhood. And she was the one that introduced me to jazz, playing all those records in the house, watching all those documentaries, International Sweethearts of Rhythm, Duke Ellington, checking out the art of Ramir Bearden, and then checking out the poetry of Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and so many other great artists and people who lived and walked the same place that we lived.
I used to share a Facebook page with Russell Malone.
Yeah, Russell.
And Russell used to post all these pictures, man. It had me in heaven. You know what I mean? Everyone. He used to post all these pictures of folks that he played with or had a
Hmm.
chance to meet and so forth. It had me in total heaven. I couldn't wait for his next posting. That was
Yeah,
the late RIP, the late Russell Malone, man. But very good guy, very good guy.
yeah.
Uh,
I, he was one of the first people I met when I first got on a jam on the jazz scene. I never
mhm.
forget one of my first jam sessions I went to when I was right out of college. He came and it was like perfect timing because as I was getting up there, it was late at night and the session was starting to kind of dwindle down. And then he comes through the door, and the first thing he does is come straight to the stage. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget, we met literally just on the bandstand. He played with me, a young musician, and gave me a
Oh,
chance,
okay.
and we became really good friends.
Oh, that is great. That is great. Yeah, Russell had a sense of humor, as I know you said you became friends, so I know you
Oh
know
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Great
he,
sense of
he
humor, a wonderful elder who really supported young musicians.
yes, 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 a good guy, man. You can't say enough about him, and he was definitely one of the dedicated ones to the music.
Yeah.
One of the dedicated ones. You went to high school, LaGuardia,
LaGuardia.
LaGuardia. Okay. High school in New York City. And that was the School of Music and Arts and Performing Arts,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Because I know everyone talks about the fame element.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey during that period?
Sure. Well, it's funny because I didn't know or plan to embark on pursuing music, and it was my band teacher, Dr. Peter Archer,
Mhm.
who really encouraged me and literally put an instrument in my hand. The neighborhood that I grew up in, unfortunately, by the time I was there, that was around the early 90s where there was a lot of budget cuts
Mm.
across the country. And of course, music and arts was the thing that was
Right.
taken out of the schools. And he was the one that put an instrument in my hand when I wouldn't have had access in my own neighborhood because he taught across town. And he was the one that really advocated for me and pushed to say, hey, you're going to audition for LaGuardia. And I was like, ooh, what is that school? And he would, I remember he took me to the concert where they had a senior jazz concert. And it was the first time I saw children that looked like me with instruments in their hand, playing their tails off. And I'll never forget that year they got into Essentially Ellington. And I can't recall if I think they won. And after that concert, I was like, okay, I'm going to LaGuardia. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to do what I need to do to get there. And the school, it was a great experience because you got to meet other students who were passionate about music from all across the city. My first 2 years, I had the great educator and tuba player, Bob Stewart, as my teacher. And he was just a joy to have because he really made everybody feel like they belonged. My last 2 years were a little different because unfortunately he had moved on and went to another school, and there was some shifting in the department. And the great thing about Bob was he knew how to include everybody. But then after he left, there was something called sexism that roared its ugly head. And unfortunately for myself and the other three girls who were in the band, we had a really, really, really hard time our last 2 years. And the experience went from being a great experience that was nurturing and fun to a nightmare the last 2 years of ours of being there. But I did learn a lot as a player, and I think that experience was helpful to me and that it pushed me to really learn and understand who am I doing it for and why I want to do it. I left
Mhm.
the high school, I went to Binghamton University and studied something completely different, thinking that, oh, I'll have a break from the pressure of a performing arts school. And little did I know all my professors were musicians. So
Mm.
the thing I was running away from, I ended up running smack dab into in college. And that was the place where I really got to grow and learn. And it was a wonderful educator by the name of Mike Carbone who saw that I needed the space to learn that was safe, where I could just learn for the pure enjoyment and love of it and not have to feel the pressure of I can't make a mistake because I'm the only lady, or I'm not as good because the guys don't want me there or whatnot. His motto was, look, everybody belongs here. Everybody's trying to play. There's a place for you, and we're all going to, encourage one another on this journey. And he was instrumental in getting me back on my horn.
Right. I know that after you left high school, and excuse my little drawl, it comes up still, even though I haven't lived in New Orleans in decades. But I'm from New Orleans, and every so often it comes up. Uh,
Yeah.
and I listened to a couple of interviews by Wynton Marsalis, and he still says my mama,
Yeah.
you know, and my daddy, and that reminds me of New Orleans all the time. But anyway, mine will come up from time to time. But in terms of I got a chance to listen to you a few times communicate the sexism aspect of your high school experience. Um, um, I guess the thing is that how do you feel? How did that really touch your life in terms of your musicianship and so forth?
Well, at the time, you have to understand when you're 14, 15 years old and you're the only girl in the band, at that time for young ladies, they might not feel as confident. And the guys, of course, might feel like, yeah, I could do it, and rah, 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 rah. But this scenario was different and a little bit more extreme in that this was a performing arts high school. So there's the ego of, well, I'm here because I belong here and I am good and I have to prove myself. And in some cases, that behavior led to sexist behaviors, as in, well, we don't want to play with you because we want to play with our guy over here. And even some direct things like, we don't want you because you suck or you're a lady, you don't belong here, type of things. So for me, I didn't at the time know what a woman playing an instrument looked like, sounded like, because I didn't even know of women that played the saxophone. It wasn't until many, many, many years later did I, one, meet one in person, which was when I was in college at the age of 22, which was Tia Fuller. And two, I didn't see them in my classroom posted on the paper on the posters for the instruments. I didn't know what it sounded like or looked like or what it manifested to be. The only inspiration that I had were the records, Dexter Gordon, um, of course, George Coleman, John Coltrane. And in my head, I thought, okay, whatever that sound is, I want to get to that. I don't know how it feels or what it looks like to manifest this dream, but my inspiration is how the music sounds and what it makes me feel. And if I can get as close to that and trying to play and do my best and being the best player that I can be for myself and obtaining that vision or that sound that I hear and getting that feeling, that's my goal. And that was the guiding light, I would say, during that time that really helped me to grow as a player because the focus was more on how can I get to that rather than how can I prove myself or how can I prove that I belong. It was more about let me get straight to the music. And in one stance, it was good for me to figure that out at 13, 14 because it helped me to become focused. But then on the flip side, I had to learn how to open my eyes to see that that was a specific situation at that time, at that period in my life where once I got out of that bubble of that environment, I learned to see, oh, wow, there's a whole bigger world out there where it's not like this situation where it's you have to fight to learn. In some spaces, you're welcome to learn, or you're welcomed and respected because of the sound that you're putting out in your instrument, rather than the fact that you don't look like something that somebody wants in their band. And that helped me to kind of really grow and embrace the journey as it's really about getting to the center of the music and most importantly, the love of it.
I'm going to get petty for just a second, uh, because I've heard you tell this story, and I once I listen to you saying it, I always ask myself, okay, but how many of those guys who were there at your
Mhm.
high school, particularly, how many of them reached the level that you've reached?
That's a great question. You're not the first one to ask that. Right off the bat, I think of my graduating class, I know of one person. Everybody else didn't go as far. And
And that's the point. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
I think when you tell your story, when I heard it before, when you tell that story, we need to tell the young ladies. I have a daughter.
Mhm.
We need to tell the young ladies out there the reason why they need to keep going.
Yeah.
You know, it may not seem a certain way
Yeah.
when you're going through the storm, okay, but very few of them, and like I said, I hate to be petty, very few of them made it to jazz at the Lincoln Center. You know what I mean? Jazz at the Lincoln Center Orchestra, I should say. Okay, and you have, and you're among those historical figures, in my humble opinion, because you were the first female to
Mhm.
occupy a seat among those distinguished jazz instrumentalists, you know. But anyway, I'll turn off the pettiness now.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much for saying what you said. And I think what's so important is, and I look back at my experience and those 20 years ago, and then I look today and I see, wow, if I had known the journey that God was going to put me on at 13 years old, my head would have probably like But to see how you could have a situation that might be sour or painful and it be turned into something not only beautiful, but that benefits other people. It's a joy. I mean, being on the bandstand with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and seeing other young women who are holding their instruments and wanting to play or getting those messages in my email or in my social media inboxes of all the same questions that I had at 13, but the difference was I didn't have anybody to ask those questions to, or I was too scared. And now having that space being made or seen by other women around the world to know that, hey, we see you. Your space is here. There's a place for you to be able to ask those questions. There's a place for you right here in this band too, where you can play and you can come and be yourself and you don't have to prove anything. All you have to do is just play and you will be respected by how you sound, not just by how you look or not just by what gender you role you fit in. You're accepted by the pure ability and talent of how you sound, and it's basically you, your identity, your special thing that you bring to the table.
Mhm. Um, I want to go back just a little bit, and that's after you left college.
Mhm.
You went into New York, the jazz scene, I believe. Could
Mhm.
you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Well, once I got out of college, I think that was like the real school. Because there's a school, a music school. I didn't go to music school, so I kind of had to my last year of college put myself mentally there. So I was taking classes in geological science during the day and at night practicing in the practice room. And when I got out of college and came back to New York City, I knew that there were things that I needed to work on. And my first mentor that I got in touch with was saxophonist Tia Fuller. And she was incredible because she kind of helped me to figure out those next steps as a saxophonist and as a woman. I had other mentors, but this was my first time I ever got to really speak to another woman I could see myself in and ask those questions. And she ended up pairing me with Bruce Williams and Mimi Jones, and they were instrumental in literally whipping me in shape. I remember the first conversation I had when I started taking lessons with Bruce. He said, "Look, you're a young lady. I want people to respect you for what's coming out of your horn. I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, they're gonna look at you and they're not gonna give you a time of day. So we want to make sure that whatever comes out of your instrument, it makes them stop in their tracks and look and reconsider what they're thinking or what they're saying." And he helped me to get my stuff together. He whipped me in shape. Abraham Burton, Bill Saxton. I wanted to study with him because I knew he came out of the school of Frank Foster. And there were so many things as a saxophonist and also harmonically that I knew that pulled my heart and I wanted to learn and explore. And he sat me down and gave me lessons and taught me the lineage of the tenor saxophone. And then, of course, the great Antoine Roney, who took me in. There's a saying how if you're a young new saxophonist on the scene, cats would always kind of know, have their finger on the pulse to see who's coming through. And Antoine was one of those players for saxophone players. And my husband, who was my friend at the time, introduced me to Antoine and said, "Hey, here's a young lady. She's trying to play. Could you give her a chance? She really, really wants to grow." And he took me into his home and sat me down and really mentored me, not just as a saxophonist, but even also as a vocalist, helping me to understand my artistic path and what ways I want to develop it, how to develop it, sitting me down and watching the videos and analyzing them, looking at the solos, making sure that as a horn player, I was competent, making sure as a vocalist, I knew my history and my lineage. They just really became my family and my community and swooped me up at a time where I needed it the most in my early 20s. And I got that confidence and I got that love that I needed at 12 or 13 years old at the age of 22 and 23, which gave me the strength to really take off and hit the scene.
Um, my next question would be, do you still believe that it's necessary for a jazz musician to go to New York in order to make it? To make it?
I think it's important because if you think about all the other music in the world culturally, if I wanted to study traditional Indian classical music, I would go to India. If I wanted to study traditional Chinese music, I would go to China. And it's the same thing. Jazz was birthed here in this country, but when we talk about the development artistically of the art form, you have to come to New York City because New York City was where you can cut your teeth and prove yourself as a player. All of the well-known players that we respect and love in this history made that trip to New York City. Um, Almost like the voyage of the Mecca of jazz. They all had to come here. This was the stop before they took off. Or in some cases, for some people, they made it here, but then it was like, you know what? I'm not cut out for this, or this is not what I want. New York City is the place where you get to really test your skills against people who are doing it day in and day out, and where you get to really see the truth for yourself. Is this something that I want to do? Do I have it takes to make it? And do I most importantly have the endurance? Because people can come here, but not necessarily have the endurance to stick it out and stay true to it, despite the rain, despite the storms. But this is a place where you really prove to yourself, okay, I can do it, and I'm doing it.
When you speak up about endurance to make it as a jazz musician in New York City, what do you feel are some of the obstacles?
I think one of the biggest obstacles is the community. When I came up on the scene, I have an interesting story because I grew up in New York City, but I still had to make my way in the community. I didn't know the scene because just because I grew up in New York City didn't necessarily mean I was part of the jazz scene. I had to get into the jazz scene and understand and see that there's a culture, there's an understanding of this music, not just in terms of the technical aspect where you might get that from school, but in terms of the cultural richness of it, the relationships of the people, how you're seeing the people interact, the elders with the younger generation, the history in terms of seeing those elders play and being able to watch and process. How are they conducting themselves when they're performing for people? How do they make people feel? How are they reading the audience? What kind of repertoire are they're pulling from? Why are they making those selections when they see the audience? How are they able to take their mastery and skill in a split second, make a decision artistically that can either uplift the music or push it forward? All of those experiences you learn from being on the scene, understanding the relationships between the people at the clubs. So what? They don't play music, but they understand, appreciate the music. They know the history, they know the music. So you can sit and talk records with a patron who loves the music because they really love the music and learn a lot from them because they've seen those musicians 20, 30 years before you came here to be able to share those stories, to give you the inspiration to know what to do or what direction to take. The club owners, the people who promote the music. There's a whole community that's built in this scene, not just the musicians, but the people around it who help make the music thrive and have a place and a home. And I think when young musicians come to the scene, it's important for them to experience that because sometimes when we're in the school environment, it's literally just that we're practicing, we're dealing with our music ourselves in our own little small space of just shedding all day, but never really having that connection with the community. Not just coming and playing with people that you like or you think you should play with, but all the people in the community who have been there and seen the waves come in and out for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. There's something to learn about that, and it makes you a better musician.
What was your first professional gig like? Tell me about your first professional gig. What
My
was it
first
like? And where was it? Where was it? Where was
Oh
it?
man, my first professional gig was with Dr. Archer, my middle school teacher. Real quick side tangent. He was the inspiration behind the movie Soul. And it's funny because I remember he would always tell me, well, I remember every summer he would come and have these books He was like, Thermy, that was my nickname. You're going to learn this music because you're going to be auditioning for LaGuardia. You need to learn these etudes. You need to learn this. You need to learn that excerpt. And I remember one time he said, Thermy, I'm going to put you on a gig when I first started playing tenor. And I was like, mm-mm. I was so shy and scared. And he told my mom, because we lived not too far from each other, he actually drove to my house during the summer. God bless him, a public school teacher off for the summer coming to find me. And he knocked on the door and said, Miss Thurman, I'm going to bring Thurmy on my gig. She's going to be playing in my band. Make sure that you mark off these dates. She's coming with me, and you're coming too. And my mom, of course, was like, who is this man telling me where I'm going to take my daughter? And the first gig was with his band called Just Friends. And it was a band of public school music teachers who had a passion for playing jazz. And I remember I was the youngest one. I was like 12 years old. And I was around all these teachers. And it was my first gig, but it was one of the best first gigs to have because they had so much belief and confidence in me. I was terrified because I knew what I couldn't do in terms of like, oh, I don't know this scale yet, or I'm trying to figure these things out. But they were so loving and they had so much belief in me. And they were like, no, you belong here. And we want to create this space for you to learn, to stretch, to grow. And I ended up actually playing with them all the way through high school and all the way through college. But it was one of my first gigs.
And what was the first your first professional performance in terms of you being on the marquee? Your
Um,
name.
my first professional performance of me on the marquee. That's a hard question. Interesting. Um, I would say the very first one, probably in New York City. I think there was a place called The Garage, and that was like my first gig as a band leader with my name as a marquee. But I can tell you this, my first tour with my name on a marquee was in Russia. And I never forget, um, my husband, he he's a drummer and we have a band together. And at the time he knew a promoter out there and the promoter was asking him, he was like, hey, do you know any young musicians that I should, put on this tour? And he was like, I was thinking of this person. And my husband, who was my friend at the time, he was like, no, you need to call Camille. And he's like, well, who is this Camille? And he pulled out the videos. He's like, look, she can sing, she can play, she can arrange, she can compose. You need to have her. And he was like, okay. And at that time, I was young. I was on the scene. I was working with a lot of bands, but I was still working out my stuff too. And I remember when Jao came back home, he pulled me aside and said, listen, I just gave your name to this promoter. He's going to give you a call. Okay. He's going to put you on this tour. It's a 3-week tour. You and I got work to do. We're going to train. Okay. It is May. The tour is next summer. Between now and May, just like you saw the movie Rocky, that's what we're going to do musically. Okay. Because I put my name out there for you to have a chance. And he was like, and I believe in you, but I want to make sure that you're ready. You're ready. And it was training. But it was a blessing because everything kind of worked out perfectly. I ended up getting my first residency gig. It was a weekly gig at Smoke Jazz Club and that year I got to work out all my music, working out arrangements and playing with the band every week. And then I ended up placing in an international Sarabande vocal competition that same year. So I had the experience of doing these gigs every week and having my own repertoire and then doing the competition. And by the time I finished the competition, the tour happened. Actually, the tour happened right before the competition, but all of those things together helped me to get in shape to be able to do the music and be able to do the tour. And yeah, that was my first international tour with my name on the marquee.
Great, great, great. Um, who are your favorite five saxophonists?
Ooh, okay. Um, I love John Coltrane. I love Joe Henderson. I absolutely love, and he knows this. I love, 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 love George Coleman. He's my hero. I also love I would say Sonny Stitt. And then I also love Pharoah Sanders. I mean, five is kind of hard because right now I'm thinking of all the other players too that I love too. But if I had to pick a solid five, yes.
Mhm. Very good. Uh, and you didn't throw my boy in there, you're all right, but that's okay.
I threw all tenor players.
Oh, okay, 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 okay. And you didn't mention Parker.
I love Bird, absolutely. I was just thinking tenor players, but yeah,
Okay,
of
got you, got you,
course,
got you.
Bird.
Okay, okay, you're forgiven. You're
Yeah.
forgiven. Um, uh, could you please name for our Jakesong Musings audience your five favorite songs, regardless of style or genre? It
Hmm.
just has to be your favorites. Five of them.
Okay. There's a beautiful Duke Pearson tune called You Know I Care. I love that ballad. I love Lee Morgan's Sierra. I love Frank Foster's There Will Be a Time. I also love, honestly, I love any and every song written by the great bassist Buster Williams. And there's a couple of wonderful compositions that I love that was penned by the great Tony Williams. So any of his compositional pieces I love too.
And when you say Tony Williams, you mean the drummer?
Hmm.
The drummer. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. Jazz at the Lincoln Center. Jazz
Hmm.
at the Lincoln Center Orchestra. You've worked with the great Wynton Marsalis. What's it like to work with Wynton?
It's a joy. Um, when I first got the call to work with the band, I think I was in Cameroon on a tour with my band in Africa, a State Department tour. And I was just shocked to know that he even knew that I existed. But what was beautiful about that was a couple of guys in the band, they knew me or they heard me or they worked with me or they've seen me throughout my development and they had recommended me, which really touched me because you never know who you encounter and how what kind of impression that you leave on them. And sometimes that's the thing that makes people remember you for those things that you probably would have never thought of doing in your wildest dreams. And then just them remembering that encounter in a positive way, they put your name in the hat. And that's kind of what happened. Um, Working with Wynton, he strives for excellence. You can't bring anything less than that. But also, what I loved about working with him, he trusted his band. He had the absolute utmost faith and respect and trust in his band. So all the decisions that would be made, whether it was musically or even other things, he gave the band a voice and a space to be able to contribute and speak or share their thoughts because he saw leadership as something that's not just about I, it's about we. And I respected that so much because you don't see that every day. Um, to see somebody who's been doing it for a long time run his band in a way where it's like, look, we're a family, but at the same time, we hold ourselves accountable. It was an excellent opportunity for me to learn from another band leader how to be a band leader. And seeing also, too, how he was never afraid of giving young people a chance, too. He didn't know me from Adam. I mean, he heard about me from other musicians, but there was no audition. There was no process. He just trusted from the word of his musicians that, hey, this young lady can play. And he signed me up, which was supposed to be for 1 year, and it ended up being 2 years, just off of that faith and trust. So for me as a musician, I knew, okay, whatever things you're thinking about, focus on the fact that you were here for a reason and selected for a reason because he has the utmost faith and trust in you. So now you got to do your job and deliver that trust and faith in the music.
Right, right. Could you describe for our audience what a day of, say, when you're rehearsing, what does that look like as it relates to jazz uh, at the Lincoln Center Orchestra? How does the rehearsal, what goes on
Well,
behind the scenes look?
when I was there, a typical day could be we rehearse at 10 a.m. and the day finishes at 5. So all day you're rehearsing. And depending on whether it's for a show or for a tour, that determines how much time we have too. So if we were performing in New York City, we might have 2 to 3 days of rehearsal for a show. And then the show might start on Thursday. So that means if the show was starting on Thursday, we had Tuesday and Wednesday to rehearse. Or if it was actually, if the show was starting on Friday, we had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If the show was starting on a Thursday, we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to rehearse. And in some cases, if we were going on tour, say for instance, a 5-week tour, you probably have 2 days of intense rehearsal. And both situations are very different in that. One, if you're performing in New York City, you're performing new music, you have 3 days to really work it out. Whereas when you're going on tour, you're literally running stuff one time through and move on. For me at that time, it was the majority of the the original members were there, particularly for the sax section. So everybody knew the music. I was a newbie. So it was like learning 30 years of how somebody plays, plus 30 years of repertoire in addition to the new repertoire that you're getting at thrown at right now. So when we were preparing for tours, I really had to learn how to listen, not for the sake of playing for perfection, but listen for where are the spots that I need to look at later on so that I make sure that I'm hitting the things that are important that I need to take care of because I don't have ample time to practice and rehearse it and get comfortable. I have to get the information that I can get right now, but that's at the same time make note of the things that I need to get to as soon as I have a minute. And we would run through what, 20, 30 tunes maybe in 2 days. Just read it one time, next, read it one time, next, read it one time, next. And the next time you might see that tune is maybe the sound check. And you're not playing it all the way through, you touch and go. The next time you really see that tune is when you hit. So for me, I had to do a lot of homework outside of just being with the band, whether it was on my way to rehearsals or leaving rehearsal or any free time that I had in between rehearsals, or sometimes for the lunch break, I wasn't going out to go get lunch. I was finding a corner, putting my headset on and studying the charts and studying the recordings. It was like a 24/7 job because I knew that it was more than just playing what you see on the page, right? I had to get the spirit, the vibe of the band, but also get the mindset of making sure that each piece I was giving the piece what it needed.
Who recommended you for the gig? Did you ever find out?
It was a couple of guys. Um, I don't know exactly, but I have a feeling who. I know probably it was a matter of they mentioned my name and a couple of guys were like, yeah. Victor Goins I had known since I was 13. He gave me one of my first lessons. Vincent Gardner, I knew it out since I was 15. He came as a guest for the Jazz Standard Youth Orchestra, and I met him and his brother. Kenny Rampton, I remember I met on a train on my way, I think it was to school. And Carlos, he's a fellow LaGuardia High School alumni. So there's that love. But Marcus, I knew from just working there in education, doing master classes and workshops with young children. And I did some things with his wife, Riza. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it went down.
What's the vibe like in terms of uh performance day?
Performance
Yeah,
day?
yeah, jazz at the Lincoln Center Orchestra for you guys.
But when I was there, from what I remember, if the performance was going to happen, usually we would have a sound check. The first night we would have a sound check, and then we would have the performance. And there was always some time spaced in between. I developed a routine of making sure that I would get to the place early so that I had a chance to just work through the music and just kind of mentally making sure that for each piece, whatever I needed to cover or work on, that I was at a place where, okay, I'm not thinking about it and I'm more so playing with from the sense of feeling. And I would warm up on all my instruments, flute, clarinet, and tenor. And depending on the night, I might have to pull out bass clarinet, maybe you might have to pull out alto flute, soprano, whatnot. And then getting to the performance, the energy, from what I remember, every night was different because the hall would be packed. And it was like this anticipation or excitement of wanting to hear what's on the playlist for this week. If it were new pieces that we were working on, I know for me there'd be a sense of excitement just because there's that thing of writing something hot off the press and giving it to the band and just trying to work it out. And the beauty of that is that every night you're getting closer or better at finding out the natural ebb and flow of the piece. And then getting on the road and being able to really grow with it. That's the thing that I always enjoyed. But yeah, a typical performance night, there would be excitement all the way up till the downbeat. And then
Oh,
once you hit that first note, you just play. Um, I would try not to think because I wanted to take in every minute of just trying to be in the moment and just trying to have my ears open so I could hear and play off of the nuances of the band rather than, you know, the just reading the music because what a lot of people don't understand is when you're playing in a band, especially a band that's been established, there's a sound. There's a relationship and a rapport we build personally, but there's a sound that's developed. And it's one thing to just read music, but when you're playing with the band, it's more than just reading the pages on the band on the notes on the page. You're trying to catch the nuances of how the band breathes together. You're trying to anticipate how they phrase. You're trying to anticipate how they accent. It's almost like watching a school of fish move or synchronized swimmers or synchronized dancers. So the music is kind of like that. I mean, if anything, the most nerve-wracking thing is can I be relaxed enough to be able to just tap into that and go and trust? Because there's nothing you could do. You could practice to the wazoozy, everything perfectly, but the truth is not going to be revealed until that first note you play and being able to trust that, okay, I can hear and feel the band and be able to just go and not
yeah,
push.
mhm. Yeah, I always look at it like the chart is the floor plan
Hmm.
or the blueprint, and you have to breathe life into it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You have
Hmm.
to breathe life into it.
Yeah.
Um, and on that, let me just dial it back just a little bit. In terms of the first time, we're still with jazz at the Lincoln Center Orchestra. The first time, how was your reading?
First, I remember the first rehearsal. It's man. Well, first off, the first rehearsal, I was on pins and needles because you just don't know what to expect. And I remember the first read through, I was just like, okay, all right, I made it. Because it's not just you trying to catch the notes. It's like you're learning off the fly how to catch all those nuances too. And even if you play the rhythms perfectly, you could be sticking out like a sore thumb in a section, or the cutoffs might not necessarily be in alignment. So my reading was pretty good, but I would say it took about a good 4 to 5 months to really capture the feel of the band. so that it wasn't just I'm just reading the chart down. It's like, no, you're reading the chart, but you're also catching the nuances and moving with the flow. And once that started to kick into gear, it felt so much better because now you're reading the parts not just for what's on the page, but for what you hear when you see the page.
And you guys do a lot of, or at the time you did a lot of traveling around the world, even, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when I was there, we did a tour in South Africa. We did a tour of Asia. So we were in China. We also did a tour in Singapore. Was it Singapore? We did a tour. I'm sorry. We did a tour in Australia. Of course, all over the country. Um, I'll never forget we did the tour in Brazil. That was one of my favorites. But yeah, Europe, everywhere.
Let's go to this unique time in American history,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
COVID-19.
Yeah.
What type of effect did that have on your life as a musician? COVID.
Ooh, it was kind of rough. Um, well, for musicians, we make a living making music, performing for people. And to not be able to gather in large spaces with other people was hard. Yeah, we were able to adapt and make adjustments by streaming concerts but it wasn't the same. I think the hardest blow was not being able to connect with people because that's what we feed off of when we play. Believe it or not, when we play, it's not just, oh yeah, I got all this music and I'm just pouring it out. A big part of the performance is pulling in from the audience. And when the audience is not there, it's kind of lonely. It's kind of one-sided making music. So that was the biggest thing that I missed. During the time of COVID, it's crazy because right when COVID happened was when I left the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. And I remember there was this big feeling of, okay, everything has been put to a pause. What am I going to do? And I had some ideas of what I was hoping to do. And then COVID happened. So it was kind of a thing of, okay, before I even had a chance to get those ideas to take off, now I got to readjust. And the beautiful blessing in COVID was that my husband and I, we were together. And that was actually the time when we ended up getting married. Yeah. Um, I think if anything, it really taught us to have faith and to trust that everything was going to work out, despite knowing, like on the page, my calendar is empty because we can't perform. But seeing how every month we would get by, we would make it. And then the beautiful blessings of still having music to make. Um, there was so much going on socially, and you couldn't help but be affected by it and feel something. And that became the fuel for us to keep playing during a time where we might have been battling with feeling depressed because we can't play for people, but we still had connection with people in different ways outside of what we were used to normally that gave us the inspiration to keep going and to keep trying. And for me and my husband, we ended up recording in our house. I ended up finding a way to connect with young women because I had always wanted to do it, but I was on the road with Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra and I didn't have the time to be able to put together other projects that I really, really wanted to do that I was passionate about. And now I had all this time on my hands. So I ended up forming the Haven Hang, connecting with young women around the world to see how they're doing, one, but most importantly, two, creating a space where we could have those conversations of being identifying as a lady and trying to navigate how do you pursue a career in the arts? How do you, most importantly, develop yourself as a person? How do you develop confidence? How do you find inspiration when you might be in situations where it's tricky and you need a boost of inspiration or somebody to drop a name of somebody to listen or to check out or maybe find somebody that you identify with that now gives you that hope and saying, okay, I see myself in that person. Now I want to keep practicing. That became one of the things I ended up developing during that time. I ended up teaching. I ended up getting a position to teach at a college. And teach other saxophone students and vocal students. And then I ended up getting hired to teach along with my husband at McGill University, which opened up a whole new door to teach on an international level, but at the same time, bring that same love and joy for the music to a place where, we probably would have never otherwise connected had it not been for COVID.
Do you see there being any lasting effects of COVID on your life currently?
Um, it's interesting because in the beginning, when once COVID was kind of decided to officially now we can open up, you could see the hesitancy because I remember one of the first tours I did with my band, we went to Sweden. And I remember the club owners were telling us, yeah, once the concerts end, people go right home. Whereas before pre-COVID, there was a culture of, well, with the concert hang ended, the hang began.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
would mingle and people would talk and, connect. And I saw that right away change, which for me as a musician is like, well, that's part of the music. That's part of the experience, getting together and talking right after the performance. And that was kind of sad to see because that's part of what we do. But it's getting better. I will say it is getting better. We've done some festivals and tours since that at that time, and people are coming out. People are performing. People are coming to see the music and supporting it. Um, but I will say now we have a whole new thing different from COVID that is affecting the arts world. And that's kind of scary to see what that's going to look like within the next year.
You mentioned the your Haven thing. Okay.
Mhm.
Could you tell us, and you started that during the COVID, right?
Yeah, I started that during the
Yeah.
pandemic. Mhm.
What was the reason for starting that, and what was the purpose behind it?
Well, I remember that particular summer, I was watching the Olympics, and Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles were killing it. And I was like, man, they're just watching the form and the beauty of them being in the space that they love. And despite all the negative stuff that people were saying, they were going out there every night and just standing so tall and strong and just killing it. And I thought about it and I was like, musically, I can identify with that because even though we don't flip around on trampolines and bars, musically, it feels like that sometimes, where you have to go out there against the odds and really just pour all you can into your craft and just try to be the best that you could be, despite what you hear, despite what you feel. And I know what it's like to go out there in the public space and face those challenges. I was just thinking, man, I wonder if there's a space to talk about what's it like as a woman developing the strength to endure in your craft. And then I started thinking about even more like, well, what about the ladies who are just starting? I mean, yes, the ladies who are in it, we have our stories too, but what about for them? They need to hear how we even got here. They need to hear our stories, not just the glam stories of, and she won a Grammy or and she won a Tony and she won an award. They need to hear the stories of, yeah, I dealt with being the only lady in the band. Yes, I dealt with not feeling confident. Yes, I dealt with not being able to look out and see people that I can identify with in this path that I want to pursue, but needing to find inspiration. How do you find inspiration? How do you find mentors? What are the things that encourage you when you feel down? What do you do when someone tells you, hey, we don't want you here because we think you suck, or because we think we want our best friend there who's our dude, but we don't want you? How do you develop as a person to get the strength to be able to pour into your craft and be that strong person that people see out there? And I talked with my best friend, Uni Mojica, and she was like, you should do it. And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, just do it, and everything will fall in place. And that's exactly what happened. I put out a blast on my social media, and I knew that I was getting messages from young ladies, but I figured, you know what, let me send a message to them. If there's any questions or if there's anything you want to talk about, this is the date. This is the link. Show up. I'll answer your questions. And I had about like 15, 20 questions come in. And we had women from all over the world logging onto that Zoom. And I live streamed it to make sure that other people could have access on Facebook and Instagram. And I just remembered that session went for like 2 hours almost.
Hmm.
And it was beautiful just to hear all the questions and see they were the same questions that I had when I was 15. And the joy of knowing, okay, now we can make a space for those questions to be answered and for your questions to be heard. But then the flip side of it was when I started doing the series, I had band teachers, educators, and even men who were musicians reach out to me saying, thank you for creating the space because I did not even know these are the things that are on young women's minds when they're playing in my classroom. Or I didn't know that these are the things that young women face or encounter. Or I didn't understand what the process was in your head when I asked you that question. Or when I did not ask you, or when I did not include you. And it became a wonderful gathering space during a time where we were all at home, but a place to create a space for us to start the conversation and just have a place that was safe for young women to come and learn. And then that's when I decided, you know what? I'm not the only person that has, experience. There's other people that they need to be hearing from too. People who are my mentors and heroes. So that's when I brought on Dee Dee Bridgewater and Terry Lynn Carrington and Crystal Torres and Maxine Gordon to share their experiences on how they became the person that they are to help them become the artist or the author or the curator that they aspire to be.
Yeah, and I noticed that you also had a young lady I think is extremely talented, Jasmina Horn.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely, I really like Jasmina. And speaking of Jasmina, you guys were in the Cerebon competition at the same year. Am I correct?
Mhm. Yep, we did
What
plays together. But we
what
were
was the
actually really good friends before that.
okay, okay. But
Yeah.
let me ask you this. What was that competition like? What was the feeling going on in terms of the competition?
You know, here's the thing about competitions, and people might not like me for saying this. I think competitions are just competitions. And I remember my mentors told me when I applied, they were like, listen, competition could be a game. Um, and are you ready to be part of the game? Sometimes it's not really about whether or not you shouldn't use it as a judge of whether you're good or not, because there's a lot of other decisions at play politically. And we want to make sure that regardless of whatever decision they make, you as a person and as an artist are okay and you're going to keep being yourself and doing what you're going to do. That was the biggest lesson I got from that. But the process of doing that competition, it was funny because we were friends. And I remember when we first found out that we were going to make the final three, we kind of had a room together we were sharing. We held each other's hands and we were like, listen, regardless of what happens, you're a bad chick and you're a bad chick. All right, let's shake. But it was the cutest thing because it was just like we had so much love for each other that we knew it's just competition. It doesn't affect or change who you are artistically or our relationship as friends or as comrades in this field. And we both knew what it took for us to get to the point where we were standing that day and had respect for each other so that it was just like we're just gonna go out there and just hit. And come what may, whatever happens, we're still gonna keep hitting.
And you have a wonderful voice, by the way. Love your scatting.
Thank you.
A wonderful voice. And I, I I don't think it's. I'm trying to. I thought you sound more like Ella Fitzgerald to me. Yeah, as opposed to Sarah Vaughan. And I'm sure you get both, right?
I get both.
Right, right, right. And this is not to take anything away from your individual style, you know, uh, because I think you're extremely good, and I appreciate you. And I'm sure much of what you said today, there are people, young ladies in particular, but young ladies and young men who need to hear what you said today. You know, as you mentioned, I'm not sure if it was a teacher. Well, yeah, there was a teacher you were saying they didn't know that some of the questions that was being asked during the Haven Hang, was even on the minds of their students. So it gives you an opportunity. Even the Haven Hang gives you an opportunity to teach.
Yeah.
That's really to teach and inform. So that
Right.
we all can be better. So even in the worst of times, while you're going through things during COVID, you were
Yeah.
actually helping a lot of people. Who are some of the jazz musicians, uh, uh, past or present, that you got a chance to work with?
Ooh. Um, well, one of my favorite memories is George Coleman. I remember he'd always have a residency every March for his birthday at the Jazz Standard. And if we were in town, we would go see him. I remember I flew in from a gig just to go straight there from the airport to see him. And every Sunday night, the last night of the residency, he would have his students come up and play. And I remember a couple of years he would bring me up to play with him. And that was probably one of the most memorable experiences of my life because I love George Coleman. And anytime you're sitting with him, hearing him play, it's like hearing a master speak. And then playing next to him is like the most nerve-wracking thing in the world because he could tell you everything you did and then some. But George Coleman, um, of course, I mean, working with Wynton, um, I remember one year he had me as a guest. Actually, two times, two separate times. He had me as a guest for Ella Fitzgerald's centennial and also for the anniversary of A Love Supreme as a guest. And that was just an incredible experience standing out front of the orchestra and playing the music of those two iconic musicians um, with the orchestra backing you. That was just surreal. Um, I would also say Charles Tolliver. He, well, him and I, a couple of years ago, ended up doing the 60th anniversary of uh, Africa Brass at the Kennedy Center. And I remember he told me, he's like, I want to have you play the role of John and you improvise on that piece. And I was just like, you want me? He was like, yeah, I want you. I trust you and I believe in you that much. And I remember we did it with Howard University's Afro Blue, and that was one of the most incredible experiences in my life. It was spiritual, the music was at a high level, and it was just to play that music and to tap into the essence of where that music comes from, the Black experience, was just an experience I'll never ever forget. And both experiences, whether it was playing with Charles or playing with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, the music of John Coltrane, the beauty about it was, well, one, the trust that they had in me, but two, for me, the challenge was how can you honor and celebrate somebody and still be yourself? And it was just the process of preparing the music and actually doing the concert was just one, like both of them were just experiences I'll never forget that just sit up here as like special moments that I got to share with those legendary artists. Of course, Terry Lynn Carrington, a couple of years ago, she did a tribute to Jerry Allen, or orchestral tribute for Detroit Jazz Festival. That was one of the best experiences in my life too, being able to play Jerry Allen's music with strings and being up there performing with her and Esperanza Spalding and Craig Taborn and Nicholas Payton. It was a special, special performance celebrating icon Jerry.
Now, did
Yeah.
you ever get a chance to perform with Jerry?
I didn't get to perform with her and her band, but I remember one time there was another performance I did with Terry where we were honoring International Sweethearts of Rhythm, and Jerry, she came in and as a featured, and it was mind-blowing getting to play with her. She was comping and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's Jerry Allen. Okay, focus on the music, focus on the music. But she was just a powerful force of this music. And I still get chills thinking about how she was playing that night. When I'm like, I can't believe I'm blowing the solo and Jerry Allen is comping. Like it was just, yeah.
But let me go on to call off a few names, and you can tell me exactly what your thoughts are. You
Mhm.
know, okay, Tia Fuller.
That's my big sister. She's a force in this music. She's such a strong, beautiful person. Um, who at my time when I didn't see what a woman who played this music could possibly be, she stepped in.
Peter Archer.
That's like my musical father. He stepped in for me when I needed that advocacy for someone to help me get an instrument, and he believed in me and pushed till I got what he knew my potential was to be.
Antoine Roney.
Another musical father. He poured into me even when I was at my lowest of feeling hurt, or even when I didn't know what direction to do, or when the industry would be like, well, you don't know what you're doing because you can't be a sax player and a vocalist. He was like, no, I'm gonna show you who your people are and what you can be.
Diane Reese.
Diane Reeves, oh, the Queen Mother. A musical inspiration and light, just full of such joy and love. And like Tia, when I look at her, I see, wow, there's a space for me. That's who I see myself, as far as a place in this music, being able to be myself and be accepted as I am.
And you did perform with her, right?
I recorded with her.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dee Dee Bridgewater.
Same like Diane, Queen Mama. I love Dee Dee. She's again, like Diane, she's just a beautiful, strong spirit. When I see her, I see me. I see that there's a space for people like me because she made that space, being herself, and I could be myself too.
And what was your association with her? What did you work with her or
Yes, I worked with her, but also um, she's great friends with my mentor, Maxine Gordon. So they're both like my musical mothers. Um, they both took me under their wing. And I remember we had this conversation outside of Jazz at Lincoln Center. I went to see Dee Dee perform, and we all were standing outside. And Maxine and Dee Dee looked at each other, and they're like, okay, we're taking you under our wing. Anybody mess with you, anybody give you a hard time, you let us know. Because we've been in this business for a long time, and we don't want anything to happen to you. We want to look over you because you need to be here, and we love you, and we want you here, and we want to protect you. And I was just like, wow. Yeah.
last three? The very last three. Uh, Jasmina Horn.
Oh, that's my sister. I love her. Coming straight out the tradition and proudly being herself.
Have you guys gotten a chance to work together?
We did the Ever Funky Lowdown with Winton, but not our own project.
Okay,
Maybe.
okay. Yeah. Did you see that thing she did with Diane Reeves and what's the young lady, Baylor, Jean Baylor?
Oh
Did you
yeah.
see that?
Yeah,
Did
that
you
was
see that?
beautiful. That was
Yes,
beautiful.
it was, wasn't it? I think it was shot in black and white. I love that.
Mhm.
I love that as well. Yeah. Uh Samira Joy.
Ah. I remember meeting her when she first, actually when she was a senior, I believe, in high school. And it was a jam session that was put together, and I came in as a special guest. And I remember hearing her sing, and I remember thinking, she has a very mature voice that's very unique, and she's probably gonna go far. And I remember she emailed me when she graduated from high school and said, hey, I just wanted to say I'm graduating high school, and I'm gonna choose music because we had a little conversation before. She wasn't sure what to do, music or something else, and I told her to do music. And she's like, I just want to let you know, I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to pursue music. And then now, look at her. Yeah.
Okay. The very last one. Uh, Daryl Green.
Ah. Oh boy. My best friend, a musical force to reckon, who can pair it up with the drums. Um, it's a beautiful spirit and light. He he loves his music so much, and it's just a joy to share the bandstand with him every time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this interview, really. I know
Oh,
you got other things to do, and I appreciate you taking the time because I do believe these videos help a lot of people, when some are struggling with what to do with their lives in terms of being a musician.
yeah,
And in addition to that, jazz is life, period, as
it
you
is.
know, and some of the information you're giving via this interview, as well as the others I've seen you do, you're contributing to, you're informing people who don't play an instrument, don't sing, don't do anything. They're just trying to get through life, you
Yeah.
know, and you're making a contribution to them as well when you do these interviews. And I so appreciate you. I can't thank you enough. I've been watching you for a number of years, probably. I have. I've been watching you for a number of years, and I'm like, this young lady, actually, I said, this girl. This girl she's got it, man. This girl is cool, And
Oh,
as my favorite vocalist is Ella Fitzgerald, and you are definitely holding it. You're holding it, man. You're holding it. You're holding it. I'm telling you, keep doing what you're doing.
thank
And I
you.
am so glad, man, and I'm so glad that you did not let that high school period uh, interrupt what God had intended for you. You know what I mean? The purpose that God had for you. Man, you are out there blessing so many people. I had never met you, never talked to you, and I'm looking at your videos, listening to your interviews, and I'm studying you. You know what I mean? And I'm learning from you. And by the way, I have a bunch of degrees, as I mentioned earlier, whatever. But listen, Jesus didn't have a degree in theology either.
Hello.
Talk to me. Talk to
That's
me.
right.
I
That's right.
appreciate you so much. I do. And I'm sure there are going to be many people out there who will appreciate this interview.
Thank
Okay.
you so much for having me, and thank you so much for supporting.
Listen, you have a wonderful and blessed day. Okay. I
Thank
appreciate it
you.
once again.
You
Okay. Thank
too.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much. Thank you for joining Jakesong Musings.
you.
You
Thank you.
guys have a wonderful and blessed day as well.
Goodbye.